Right, recording is running and we'll start from the top. I've already shared my screen. Not much has changed on the homepage apart from the award, of course. We don't want to let that be taken away from us either. And the first thing I want to show you, or rather where there's been a small change or adjustment, is in the Design Studio. I think you all know the Design Studio. I think you all know what it's about and what you can do with it. This means I can create various links to share these links with my customers or perhaps with partner companies that work together to establish faster communication between you as the planner and the end customer or the installer so that you can also share information with each other. And we've taken the whole thing a bit further and thought, why shouldn't we include all people or all Design Studio links that exist, distribute them a bit more widely? And that's why we founded IRRISearch. IRRISearch is essentially a search platform for irrigation professionals. It's currently being developed, so there's obviously not much in it yet, but I'll show you how you can participate in IRRISearch. And you can participate in IRRISearch with a link, that is with a Design Studio link that you can create yourself. Or you simply use the link you already have. You've already used it for your website or for any social media stuff anyway. So when you're in the settings, in the project settings for this link, you have more information down here. You can enter your address there, you enter your country, your postcode, the county, and the latitude. This is automatically determined by the country, by IRRISearch. You enter your logo. You add your pictures and also all the things you want to set up. So you can already pre-select equipment here as well. This isn't for the customer, but for when you go into the project at some point. And then you have the option here to tick your offered services. This is now deactivated for me because this link is already active. You have the option to say you offer design, that is planning services. You offer installation, you offer maintenance, or you're just someone who supplies equipment. You can tick those off precisely there. Which area of irrigation your company operates in. Then you have the option down here to publish via this link. I can only publish one link at a time. This means my other links are all deactivated. So I can't publish those, only this one. And when I click on it, this link gets published. Up there is the functional globe. This also indicates that this link is published on IRRISearch. And when I click on it, I also switch to my link in IRRISearch. This is what it looks like. It's not brilliantly designed. That's not what we're about at all, because we're trying to optimize this page for search engine searches. And it's not about pictures and good looks, but really just about being found. That's why there's text and meta text stored in the page. When I click on home, I'm on a world map. And there I get all the contractors or all the companies that are represented in IRRISearch. And when I click on it, I can also see on the map where the company is located. More. There. We have the little drop that shows us where the nearest irrigation specialist is. app.irrisearch.com is the website. As I said, this certainly won't be a page that ranks very high in Google searches, because we won't pay anything for it. We also won't put any advertising on it. But the more people sign up there, the more people search for irrigation. And through this metadata that we insert, we're hoping that the page will get more visibility. And so people looking for irrigation services get a quick overview of who's positioned where and who's in which position. That's IRRISearch. And you're invited to take part. So that's free of charge. You can simply adjust your link. That's publishing on IRRISearch and showing that you're also active in the irrigation industry somewhere. And the more people involved, the better the picture becomes. And everyone who's on IRRISearch has an IRRISearch account somewhere. And that's already a quality feature in itself, I'd say. Anyone who plans properly certainly stands out from many small horticultural businesses that just install irrigation systems off the cuff. We've done the same thing when you go into your account here. Then you have a little badge here at the front. Certificator, Certified Irrigation Designer. That's basically an attempt to create a small certification for companies. Who are simply well-versed in irrigation topics and have experience in that area. And for us, that's naturally anyone who works with IRRISearch. And that's why we've created a little award like this for you. This will be automatically added to your account. If you want to change it, the name here at the top, then you can simply change the username at the bottom. And then a different name appears up there too. You can download the badge. You can put it on your homepage, or perhaps someone will make a t-shirt. We'll see. We also want to issue this anew each year. This is now 2025. You can download it quickly now. At some point, we'll do the 2026 one. Publish the logo. And so you can show a nice row on your homepage that you've been a certified irrigation designer for several years now. Right, let's move on. And into the workspace. And then I want to show you one more thing that keeps getting asked about and where there might be some confusion. In the project configuration, I have the option to make my various settings, and I can save them and apply them or set them up so they're applied to every new project. This means if I change something here and then add a few more manufacturers and perhaps also my pipes and tubes that I'd like to have somewhere, then I want to save all of that, and there's the presets button at the bottom. There are already presets in the list, but I've just changed something. That means this preset I've just created doesn't correspond to any of the presets that are already listed here. I could now select one of those and click apply, and then they would be loaded. But that's not what I want right now. So I click on presets. Oops, now I've apparently already applied them. Presets, but I click on new here. New iron. Create new settings, and then it appears here at the front, new settings. It's now loaded as well because it's now stored. I can close this now. Now I need to save this. And now I can use the slider up here. I can go to presets, project settings. There they are. I can now use this new one. Wait, it's not there yet. Hold on, we need to refresh the page. That always helps very well with IRRISearch, by the way, refreshing the page once, because many things you save in the project or elsewhere need to be stored on the server first. And then the whole thing needs to be reloaded. Then back to the slider, project settings. And there we now have the new demo setting. I can now select that like this. And this is the default setting for new projects. This means that if I save here and create a new project, then this project will have exactly this setting. You can see it there, the default setting is saved as well. And what you can of course also see here in this slider is that there are very many other presets. They're available for external project settings. That's what we were just in. Then we have various settings for layouts. In other words, we'll come back to how to set up the layouts in just a moment. We have settings for specification sheets. So for the requirements list at the back, there is a configuration menu that I can set up. For project configuration in general, I can also set things like various dimensions. So whether I want it in liters per hour or in liters per minute, or whether I want to have everything displayed in meters, centimeters, or kilometers. I have favorite tools in there as standard variants. In irrigation, in landscaping, even in layout. These are the things that are saved under favorites. Can we just take a look at a project or look in here? There we have the favorites. I can simply add them to my favorites down here by activating the stars at the front here. But even with the favorites, I have a little slider here at the front. And I can also enter presets for different favorites lists. And I can also type them in here at the front just the same, change something. And then, wait a moment, wait, I need to add something there. Let's take the surface again. Now I can set up a new one. Create a new one. Save. 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 We'll reload once more. Better safe than sorry. On this one, then we have favorite landscaping tools. And there we have what we've just saved. And these tools are then activated in the saved preset. And I can do the same thing with irrigation and also with layouts. I can also add certain things to my favorites there. The project configurations are just up here in the little cog wheel. I have all the configurations for sprinklers, for marsenat, for hydraulics there, and I can also store these here under presets, under different presets, and load them accordingly into every new project. Perhaps you have different employees who like to have different settings, and they can then simply switch between these presets by just selecting them. Okay, then one thing. Let's step out of here briefly again. Or I'll do it differently. I'll just open a second IRRISketch, right? And also in the project settings, screen size 200 meters. This is preset for most. And screen size is the grid that you see in IRRISketch. So in the drawing tool or in irrigation, and in this case, that's now 200 meters. I can set this to a maximum of 500 meters. You could also enter that and save it in exactly the same way as project settings, and then load it like that each time. Why is the grid important? We have it happen from time to time that people import very large plans, or sometimes don't pay proper attention. That means they upload an image. Here I have my favorite image, right? Dimension it and say that's 10 meters. And then they place it outside the grid or half on it. And if I then start drawing something here, then I can draw the sprinkler there. But it won't be displayed. And I also can't work with the sprinkler because it's outside the grid. This means that everything I draw has to be on the grid. In that case, I can of course go and say, I'll move it all onto the grid. Then it works. But if I now have a very large project, I might just have to increase the grid here on the outside in my project settings. If I enter my 500 meters here, then my grid is much larger. And then large projects fit on it as well. Sometimes you don't see this when you've imported a large PDF. And you're hanging with the outside beyond the grid. And then suddenly wonder why the drip pipe cannot be connected. So to plan to draw, you need the grid. And you can increase it if necessary. Let's move on to the next point. For this, I'll just take a project here that's already been planned. Let's take this one. And there's a new field up here. We have the draftsman, the irrigation, the layout, and the requirements list. And here at the front, there's now the information field. And this might look familiar to you. This is familiar because that's basically what we have from the design studio where customers can create their requests. I can enter a title in exactly the same way. I can also specify climate conditions there. I can also enter a bucket test there, simply taken over just like that. But what's more important here is the information and the file for myself. I could write in there, for example, the box is to the right of the house. Or something like pay attention to the pump when winterizing or something like that. But I can also add files here. I can add a photo there, for example. Perhaps the installer, when he was planning the system, took a few photos of how the pipework runs. I can also insert contact details here at the front. Now you can consider whether my contact details are more important there, or perhaps also the customer's contact details, which I can insert here. and then it saves the whole thing. And this is now simply saved in this project. And now I have a view link here under the project configurations. I can activate this. And then I create a link. And now I can create different links because I can also configure the links afterwards. I'll just call this one service. Okay. And then IRRISketch creates everything here. And then there's a permanent link here. That means it's always the same. It doesn't change either. It's permanently linked to this project. And I can now share this link to my customers, for example, or to my installers as well. What we'd like to do this year is take this link, which can also be nicely displayed as a QR code, print it on a small sticker, and then simply stick it in the customer's control unit. And like anyone who has this link, I'll just copy it now. And now I'll open a completely different browser. Yes, that's the one I want now, right? Insert the link. And then a copy of the IRRISketch project opens. I also have draftsman, irrigation, layout, material list up here, and also at the very back, the data that I just entered. I have my image here, which I can open and display. I have the information here that I wrote in. I have in the irrigation. I can hover over the circles. These are also displayed to me, so I can see which sprinklers are on which circuit. I also have all the information in the bar at the bottom. Length, water consumption, running time, and so forth. And I also have the sprinklers themselves. I can click on it and it shows me that there's a 4005 PCR with NPR nozzles. That's what it says in there. In my layout, I have all the configured layouts. I can, of course, add several of them and have a look at them, but I can't change anything. This means that for me, this link function is a way to document my plan. So I imagined it like this: when my installers have finished building the irrigation system, then I'll just adapt my plan to include the 2 or 3 changes that may have arisen during construction. Upload photos from the installation up, where the pipes are, where the control unit is, and so on. And then I stick the thing as a QR code into the control unit. And then the customer can access it. And he should be able to, because first of all, the important information doesn't contain prices or anything like that, but the customer has bought and paid for the system. It's his. He has a right to proper documentation. And for my installers, who will hopefully be maintaining the system for the next few years as well, that is winterizing or even the odd repair, it's naturally incredibly easy for them to simply get the plan on their mobile and zoom into it to see which sprinkler is connected to which circuit, which nozzle is installed where the valve box is hidden, and so on and so forth. I can create multiple links. I've now called the link service, and I can set here at the front which things are actually visible. For example, I can say I want the maintenance panel, I want to see the irrigation, I want to see the layout drawing, but the equipment, I don't need to see that at all. If I then save that and simply open the link again, then I only have access to the things that I've previously configured. But it didn't want to. I have to update the memory once more. I can just create this simple link for the customer where he might only have the drawing in the end. Or I can create the link for my installers who might be allowed to get more information. And so I can share information from IRRISketch with third parties. They can look, but they can't change anything. I actually think it's a very nice thing and I like using it. Tim, you have a question. Yes, indeed, exactly. So if I now move a sprinkler again afterwards or something like that, is that then directly included in the version? Or do I still have to create a link? No. The link always accesses the current project. So if the customer then changes something at some point, or a sprinkler is installed differently, I go into IRRISketch and change it. And then the link stays exactly as it is. So the link is permanent. It then always accesses this project in its current state. So I don't have to create a new link. And then at some point, there's sometimes a situation like this. I've had this before with HydroWise when someone has somehow installed something and had HydroWise on their account. and the customer has no access to his account whatsoever. And suddenly the previous contractor is no longer there, he's retired, or there's been a falling out. And then there's always the issue of, hey, now he still has access to my HydroWise account. And then you can simply reset everything, start from scratch again, and that's how it is with this link too. So I can simply delete the link if someone has the link who perhaps doesn't want it or shouldn't have it. I can delete it and simply renew it. And then the link is different. And then the previous contractor is simply out of the game. Because I have it with the QR code, anyone who gets to the control unit can click on it, including strangers, and see what the current state of the system is. And we presented this link at the trade fair in America, and they were really keen on it because the Americans, well, there's actually no property there that doesn't already have irrigation. And there the issue of maintenance or even renewal is much, much bigger than it is here. And there's apparently a very high turnover. And they just have the problem, they come into the garden and first have to spend half an hour getting their bearings just to see where the system is, where the valve box is. They sometimes search for it because it's buried and rotted away with things grown over it, and that's a big issue for them. And if they can then see with one click what's all there and where it's placed, that makes a huge difference for them. Habakkuk, you wanted to know something. Right, is it possible to protect this with a password? Because it's quite difficult if the competitor has such easy access to my data, I find that a bit problematic. It would be nice if you could protect that for the customer. No, we don't have a password function at the moment. We could, of course, add that if wanted. But as I said, it's a link. Of course I can. I don't have to click it into the control unit with a QR code. I can also just use it internally within the company, or I can give it to the customer and say, here, this is your link, use it. And if you feel that it's fallen into the wrong hands somewhere, then I simply have the option to delete it and create a new one. So if I delete this one here and rename it, call it service 1 afterwards, then it's a completely different link because it's generated from a hash each time, and as soon as I enter a different name, a different link is created. So through this, I have the option to kick people out or not. We don't have a password like that in there at the moment. I don't know if that's desired, it's not a problem to put that in, but then I know how it goes. What was my password again? Then I need to have password management. Then I need to give people the option to reset the password if they forget it, and they're guaranteed to forget it. That's why we've done it without that for now. Okay. Okay. View link. Yes, nice feature, I think. I like it. That's what I wanted. Yes, because it came up again for us this year. Last year, we took over many systems from a friendly garden landscaping company who had built systems themselves, but who wants to get completely out of the irrigation business because he wants to focus more on his garden landscaping activities. And then gives us a list of 80 irrigation systems that he's built in recent years, and that we should now look after. And then this year we went and started winterizing. And I realized afterwards that I couldn't manage with my flat rates for winterizing because the fitters naturally had to find their way around the garden first. Where are all the pipes? Where might there still be water outlets? Is there a pump that needs to be winterized? What do I need to watch out for? And so on. And then came the request from my fitters. We really should document things better or write them down somewhere. And then I spoke to Philip. He said, come on, we'll do it all through IRRISketch. We'll do it centrally. And we've now gone to systems that we don't even have in the plan yet, which are existing systems. I'm not going to go and start drawing all the systems because that's also a lot of work to do all that, but simply create a blank IRRISketch. Take a satellite image for all I care and just enter what I know. I might know where the valve box is. I might know where the control computer is. And I might know that there's a lawn area at the back. There are 3 sprinklers and they're positioned there. I can simply enter that into my sheet, just draw it in like that without having to do major piping or calculations. And I have the opportunity on the info page to take photos, add information. And the more information I get about the project, the more I can then naturally add without having to make a huge effort. But the information is centralized and also accessible to anyone who wants to or is allowed to. Oh, okay, favorites, we've already covered that. Then let's move on. Let's start simply with a project and go into the topic of saving. Oops, yes, okay. So how is it saved? I'll wait. I'll do another project because then I'll have even more information about it. How is it saved? We've had the issue of saving time and again with people calling and saying my project is gone and so on and so forth. Basically, because IRRISketch is in the browser, there is on one hand storage in our cloud which works automatically. Storage really activates automatically there, and it saves it in the cloud. But there's also temporary storage in the browser. And because we want to focus more on saving, it should actually be the case that as soon as I draw something, it's also saved, but there are always crashes. Or people leave and suddenly everything is gone. You all know this, it's annoying, and we usually check to see if there are any old versions that can be restored and so on. We've now changed this a bit and said we'll put a save button up here where you can actively save. And the button also reminds me to simply press save from time to time. Maybe you've all worked with Word before, it's the same issue there. I'm typing. And every programmer who works a lot on the computer knows one function inside out. That's Control S, so Control plus S together. That's the saving, so this here, and then Word or any document saves. Or every Windows application automatically saves once. And that also works in IRRISketch. With IRRISketch, as soon as I start drawing, there's basically a little countdown running behind it, the more things I draw. Then my indicator up there starts to glow yellow or orange. Then at some point it continues. At some point the whole thing turns red. Come on, the whole thing always turns red. And at some point it also starts flashing red. For me that means please save actively once, either up there or simply Control S. Then it saves it, it's green again, and that's okay. So it's meant to be an active reminder that you should also save in between. That makes things safer. Then we have, as soon as I click on save here at the front, or click exit, I also have this download file option here again. That's the same function that I also have up here. There I can also download things, download the file, and then this is also in the field again so that I can also actively download it again automatically when I have really big projects that I've put a lot of work into. That's a TXT file. When I open it, it's not readable for anyone like this. But I can simply open the project in IRRISketch when I create a new project. And then click on load up here. And then I take the file and load it in. And then I have my project back. So if you have big things that are important and so on, you can also save them locally on your computer. Nevertheless, there is of course also automatic saving, which is available in every browser, but that's really browser dependent. And if you're working with Chrome now, and the next day with Microsoft Edge, and on the third day with the Safari browser, then that's not interoperable because it's really saved by the browser. And for that, we have our little clock up here. There. And it shows the last automatic save states. I can access them here. So when I'm in there and have somehow deleted everything for whatever reason or everything is gone, then I can simply call up an earlier point in time. That works too. That was this saving which I wanted to encourage you all to pay attention to. Control plus S should be standard practice. Anyone working with it should press Control plus S from time to time simply to trigger the automatic save function. Right, the next thing we have, These are all just a few little things that I think make things easier, but which might also add value for you. And the next thing that's coming up, well, I'll have to hold my hands up here. I've been working with IRRISketch for I think 8 years now. And I've always wondered why on earth I can't draw a proper circle. In IRRISketch, I always needed to create a round lawn area. And then I'd somehow start with something like this. Yes, not quite round. Then you start trying to bend corners and making sure the thing becomes round. And I was always frustrated that I couldn't draw a round circle, especially with a lawn area or a flower bed. I don't know how it happened. This year, some colleague from America wrote in the WhatsApp chat asking how do I make something round. And Philip pipes up and simply says, well, just use the brush. You have a brush tool with which you can, of course, do things like that, paint things, but you can also simply adjust the size of the brush. And just click, there you have a perfectly round area. I don't know which of you knew that. I didn't know it for 8 years. And I slapped my forehead and thought, Philip, why don't you tell me things like that? But I'd never asked either, I have to be honest. But that's how you can also work under brush. All the polygons are still in there, sand, beds, water, whatever. And then I can simply make something round there. I can even change the brush shape. I can also set it to a triangle and make triangles that are perfectly triangular in different sizes. Well, it's all there. You just need to know about it, but I wanted to tell you about it. Then we have various shortcut keys, which I'm sure you all know about. For example, when I draw something somewhere, and I hold my shift key, then I draw straight lines or at 45-degree angles. It's very useful when I'm laying pipes that should run parallel to each other. So just hold down the shift key, and I draw straight lines. Then, of course, I have the enter key. That means I then have the same function I had before. It gets activated on my mouse again. Then I have the tab key, the tabulator. That's this right arrow that's at the top left of the keyboard. And with that, I can cycle through functions. That means if I have here, for example, a drip line, let me just draw something somewhere. And I want to modify the drip line now. And I activate it, then I have here at the bottom left, the various options. I can add an outlet here or something like that. If I simply press the tab key, I also get add outlet. And then I can click on it, tab key and click, and off we go. So I use the tab key to jump through the various functions, either add or modify, or snap to, things like that. I can just do them like that. Then I'd like to briefly remind you about the snap function up here, or alignment function. That means I can snap to grid, to objects, to vertices, or to lines. When I align to grid, my mouse always sticks a bit to the grid points, so I can only ever draw on the grid. It's not a big deal, but you need to know about it. The next thing we have would be aligning to objects. That's interesting when I, for example, here, let's say I draw a few sprinklers somewhere, and I want to dimension them in the layout. Then I want my elements here, dimensions. Then I somehow look for the point in the middle because I want to dimension cleanly. And if I simply use the function to align to the object, then it snaps exactly in the middle of my sprinkler here too. And then I can execute the dimensioning very cleanly. Then we have the function at the vertex, that's always a corner, or where two lines intersect, and align. And I often use this function, for example, to draw neatly into the corners. So I have my lawn area. And now my sprinklers come in here. Let's speed this up. And now I naturally want to draw something in there somewhere. And then I want this to fit here and here. When I look in here, I've already selected that. No, not yet. Wow, look how precisely I hit that. I'm delighted. Let's do it less precisely. Like this, once like this, and once like that. I've now drawn this. That looks quite good at first. When I zoom in, I see that the thing isn't actually on the edge at all. And that doesn't run parallel here either to my lawn. And I can simply change that by up here. Vertex, that's vertex, and align to line. That means my mouse essentially sticks exactly to the corner. You can see it jumps there, and I click on it. And when I get closer to the line here, it also sticks a bit. When I click there and click there, I really get to the point perfectly. And also perfectly onto the line. That will be quite important later. Or at least not entirely unimportant when I talk about this distribution coefficient calculation, because it's also aligned with the area. One more quick thing, because it's still shown incorrectly in the video, is the nozzle dragging. If I have a nozzle here, and then I'll place the next one next to it, and I want to create the whole row. Previously, it was the case that I pressed space and then dragged the nozzle. We had to change this because we've assigned other functions that way. That means I click on the nozzle, start moving it, and now press space. And then I can drag them. And then you don't have to drag to here because then they'd be too close together, but you drag further, further, further until the coverage is clean. Yes, until there. Then you can place them here. And then let go. They simply drop out. And then the whole thing makes sense. Then they're at the correct distance from each other. So no longer press space and drag, but first drag and then press space. That's still wrong in a basic video because the video is also 3 years old today. And I can't in the video itself change it that easily now. I've still made my tips and tricks video about it, but that's the correct way to do it. Right, let's move on to a real innovation. It's not that old either. And that is the custom element, or the user-defined element. You've probably all seen that. Philip has also made a little video about it, but I'd also like to go into it a bit more deeply and give you a few ideas on how we can use this function for ourselves. Time and again, we get inquiries from customers who say, I'd like to have that component in there as well. And why isn't that included? And my sprinkler has to be like this. Can't you do something that's also calculated? Yes, we can now. We can now add various user-defined elements. And these are stored for your IRRISketch account permanently within it. And you can also play around with them and price them as well. I'll now do the following. I'll now open a second access, because to do the setup, it's actually very good to work with 2 IRRISketch accounts simultaneously. That means one where I try out the whole thing, and the other where I insert the custom element. So here we are with the custom elements. I can get in here via my account or also in the project itself. There is this little line. If I click on it, I'm there too. To have a bit of a play around with it, you'd best, as I said, open IRRISketch twice. Open once a project, once the elements, and then I create an element, test it in my project, and then I can go back and perhaps adjust it a bit. So we start here at the front, and now we're at my sets, and my sets is basically a generic term. I can organize this according to my sets for the draftsman, my sets for landscaping, my sets for irrigation, my sets for the layout. But I can also say I have a set with pumps, with robotic mowers, with sprinklers, and something else. So my sets is simply just a top category, just to store things. Store. And if I now go there and say I have a new set, then I call it something, I don't know, drawing set or pumps or whatever. Can then add a description. Add, these are my sets for my draftsman, and I can select a picture here. Select. And this picture is simply just a picture which appears here at the front. In the sets. That is the picture. It has nothing to do with any picture that I see in IRRISketch. It's simply so that I can see from the outside what's inside. This is just an illustration. That is this picture. Then I've created a set, and now I can go back into it. So it's basically just a level for organizing. Then I create a new element. So where shall we start? we'll create a tree for my draftsman. I'd like to have a different tree that somehow looks different, nicer leaves and so on. Because I'd also like to do a bit of landscaping and want to calculate how many trees I want to plant in the garden. And I'll simply, what shall I call the tree? Pine. Pine? Pine, or small pine. I'll add a description to it. The experts would now add the Latin name as well. I'm not good at that, so I'll leave it out. And then I need to enter a brand name here. I can freely choose the brand name. I can enter my company there, or I don't know, the nursery that supplies me with this pine. So it's just a brand name. The brand name must not be a brand name that already exists in IRRISketch. So not Hunter, Rainbird, Evergreen, or anything like that. Not any brand either, because that's also an IRRISketch brand name. So I'll call it something like the Gert Nord, although I don't even know if I'm allowed to write close by. Gert Nord, Schmitz, and EID. And you remember the IID, that's the thing, that's basically the IRRISketch item number. And I need to assign that now here once, because this tree will later appear in your requirements list with this number. And as you know, you can transfer the requirements list to the IRRISeller. And there you can also store the price for this tree. That's why every element also needs a unique IID. And unique means the IID must not already exist in IRRISketch. That means I can't call it MP1000 or 90 because those already exist. That means I have to choose a free name. What you write there is completely irrelevant. Call the thing tree35 if you want, or something completely different. It just has to be unique, and it must not already exist in IRRISketch. And yes, Rob, I hear you. Yes, the unique name can also be, for example, if I actually wanted to take an MPR nozzle, for whatever reason, that I now say, not MPR 2000 something, but I say nozzle. MPR 2000. So I put nozzle in front of it now. Then it's unique. Then it's unique. Then it's not the same as what we already have. That means if you write now, MPR 1000-90 and then an exclamation mark behind it, that will work again. Okay. Yes, clearly, these IDs are even globally unique. That means if I now name my tree, tree 35, tree 365, and save, then you may not name any tree 365. Then you would also get the message that the tree already exists with someone else. Now you could go and say, I'll quickly secure the best names, but my God, it's only a number and it doesn't necessarily have to have any meaning. You can write something in there, information that helps you identify the thing. And if you see that it's already taken, then just add another number behind it, or a full stop or an exclamation mark like you do with email addresses. My name is Peter Müller, petermuller.gmail.de. Oh, it's already taken. Okay, then I'll become Peter Müller, 35, and then suddenly it works. And so that's what it's about. So the ID must be unique. Then you can choose whether this element should be equipment or labor. You can also store labor values with it. I'll go via equipment now. And then you have the long list here of possible elements. I'll go through them quickly once. Custom element, that's actually like a piece element. That's actually most of what you have. My tree would definitely be a piece element. Linear element would be a line. That means if you want to enter a cable or something like that, you would take that element. The advantage with the linear element is that I can draw it just like I would normally draw a line or anything else. And I get afterwards in the list, of course, this element not displayed with one piece, but with 7.80. Line with surface is basically a line that has a width. I can also freely set how wide the whole thing should be. That would be something, for example, where you could use a mat or something like that. So if I say now I have a drip mat, for example, which has a width of 80 centimeters or 1 meter, and I want to use that, then I could set up a drip mat over it. Simply to have the length of the mat, I could then draw the meters once all over the place and thus create a drip mat. We'll do that in a minute too. Surface would be a different surface. So basically polygons like lawns or flower beds Maybe I have a different pattern that I'd like, or I have some special tiles, or something that I want to represent as a surface. And the output is then simply in square meters. Line with volume is also a line. And I get beside the length of the line. In meters, also the volume, i.e. the excavated quantity, because with line and volume, I can also enter a depth. That would be the classic for a trench, line 10 centimeters wide, 80 centimeters deep. And if I then draw it, I get in my output. This line is 7 meters long, and I have an excavation of 7 by 80 centimeters. And then a cubic meter figure comes out if I want to calculate something in trench construction. Volume itself is basically not line times depth, but area times depth. What do you need that for? Or what could I think about that for? If I now, for example, say I'm doing bark mulch or lava or something along those lines, that means I could draw an area similar to a polygon and can say, I want the area 10 centimeters high because I want to apply 10 centimeters of lava or 10 centimeters of bark mulch. And then I also get a cubic figure from it. I then have area times depth, and then I get 18 cubic meters out and know how much bark mulch I need to order in advance. Drip line is exactly what you can imagine. You can really configure a completely custom drip line here. You can set the diameter, you can set the nozzle spacing, you can set the flow rate of each individual nozzle, and then simply have an additional drip line that you can name however you'd like. Spot sprinklers are now also included. I don't know if you know these things. In Germany, you should know the Gardena Aqua Contour. Be familiar with it. A dreadful thing. I don't like it at all, but there are in America, and unfortunately also from Asia, more and more manufacturers who make such things. Produce sprinklers with variable range. They can then really on a surface clearly trace the edges and thus have an application rate. There's a company in America that's IRRISketch. They've been doing this for a few years. The thing works quite well, and we also regularly get inquiries whether we can use such sprinklers in IRRISketch, and that's the first step to get into that as well. You can find spot sprinklers in IRRISketch as well under the selection. You can also play around with it a bit as you like. Where this is heading, I don't know yet, but well, if this is the future, or if it becomes more common for people to say, I don't need an installation with 15 sprinklers everywhere, so classic sprinklers, but I install 3 in the middle and then it's sorted, then we won't close ourselves off to that and also offer appropriate tools to be able to plan well with that too. But for now, it's quite uninteresting for us. We start with our tree, so quite normal. Item element, and here I have now selected element again. And that's again not the image I have in IRRISketch, but that's again just a selection image. I've downloaded a really lovely tree here. Save. Okay. It won't accept it because it's too big. Okay, I had another tree that wasn't that big either. Select tree 1. I'm going mad. Okay, I don't care. I'll take another one. I'll take anything. Right, that's now my dill, my tree. Save. Okay, so that's again a preview image so that I can then from outside see what's inside. And now comes the actual configuration because we haven't actually done that here yet. I had to set beforehand what type of element this is. So custom line volume, drip tube or something. And now I can configure the whole thing, and that's shown here. And that's then the configuration for an item element. There's not much to configure because it's just an image. And then the first question is, in which mode should I use this element? That's a tree, so I'll put it into a landscape. Then I have different formats. I have first SVG, that's the scalable vector graphic. It's like a text thing. It's actually a brilliant graphic because it's incredibly small but can still be scaled to size without any loss of resolution. If you have SVGs, use those because that's actually the best. If you mostly have a JPEG or a PNG, then it's actually not so good because the bigger I make it, the more pixelated the whole thing becomes. So SVG would be the very best, or have a look on the internet. There are SVG generators that turn a JPEG into an SVG. You can do that then. Then we have here quite clearly, here I create the image, I select a file, choose my tree, click in, crop. And there it is. And then I save the whole thing. I set it to saved on the server, and now I jump into my project. We had the tree in the drawing program, and when I go to custom defined, it says empty because it's not in there at all. Now we're back to browser applications. I click save once and it says reload once. I'm supposed to do this every time because what I've done before needs to be loaded here first so that it's displayed. We're in the drafting tool, user-defined elements, and there we now have our tree. I can select it and there it is. Click there and there's my tree. This tree, because it's now here in the drafting tool. And that's something special because the drawing elements that I select here, if I take a tree here now and draw it, then it doesn't appear in my requirements list. Because it's a drawing element for IRRIstate, this tree, it appears. In my requirements list, it's there. Once type equipment, Gertner-Schmitz, tree 365, small pine, 1 piece. If I put several in there, then I'll have 3 or 4 in there as well. That means I have the display here of how many trees I actually want to plant here. I can transfer this to eReseller. I can enter a price there. With the IID, it says so there. And then I also get a price for my tree. That's something special. We didn't have that in the drafting tool before. So I can now also put things here in, which will also be displayed in my requirements list. Right, but now you've certainly already seen the tree here. It's really big. 30 meters, 30-meter crown. That's quite substantial. That's anything but a small pine. And incidentally, it's not a pine either, but I don't think you're that fussy. Besides, as you've just seen, my tree had a size of 8.6 megabytes. So this image has 8.6 megabytes, and that's quite a lot. If I jump up now and say, I'll then do some large garden planning, and put 15 of these trees in there, that's somehow 150 megabytes of data. And I'll notice that at some point. That means if I then click into the irrigation somehow, and then draw irrigation there somehow, then something in the program becomes slow because I have incredibly large amounts of data that need to be updated every time. So these images with 8 megabytes or so, not so good. Better smaller the better, the smaller the nicer. And I don't need such a huge high-resolution one either, image. Besides, it's far too big. That means I would now have to resize the tree every time. Somehow make it smaller here so that it comes to a size that roughly corresponds to reality. For this, we have a second function which is best used in this way. And that is I can copy out the things that are in IRRISketch. I'm in the drafting tool, click on the tree. I've sized it to the size I'd like to have. And then when I click on the tree, I have my selection field down here, and there's this new field called copy to clipboard as text. I click on it once. Now I go back to my user-defined. My user-defined sets, go to new set, and now I name the thing. Pine, or I don't know, second version, or the version I'd like to have. I can enter exactly the same description there, take a name again there, put a user-defined text on it, equipment, element, image. I can also select an image again, go to save. Okay. No empty steps, please. Also back to configuration save, go back to landscape as well, but this time I don't say image, but txt, and now I copy the text that I just had in my drafting tool, simply paste it in here. And you can see it also says tree 365. That's the whole thing. Go to save, go back to my project. Save on reload, and then I have in user-defined elements now 2 things. One's the tree that I had before, but that's the one with the high megabyte number. and also too big. And here the new Pine v2, which we've just created, which is based on the tree, but also on the text file. And it's now also exactly the size I'd like it to be, and it has a much smaller, I'd say a much smaller footprint. That means these are then really only kilobytes and no megabytes anymore. And so I then get images that are large, which I can also scale up because it's a type of vector graphic. So a type of SVG file without having to clog my entire system with large amounts of data, spam it up. What's important is this version, this TXT version is based on this. If I delete this one now, then it gets removed. So you could go into the sets and say, I'll create a set as a for template storage. Then I'll just put my box elements as images into the template storage, get myself then the TXT file from these images and take them then into my actual box elements. That would be the right way, because that way I have small files, then I've scaled them well, I have them in the size I'd like, and actually just as I need them. Has everyone understood that? It's a bit complicated. Because if I now delete this one here, so my template, then it disappears too, because it's based on that. It gets the information from here, but as a text file. So unfortunately, I have to keep that one in there. That's why you can, of course, go and say you store that in different sets and different folders in order to have a better overview. Have we understood that? You all have to nod. Very good. Right, then let's have a quick look at what that looks like with the drip tube. I'll create a new element, let's call it IRRISketch. IRRISketch Super Drip. That's my IRRISketch. Drip tube, I'll write something else in there, put in a brand name IRRISketch, and the ID is called IRRISketch Super Drip. It's equipment, and I take the drip line here, can then also make another picture of the drip tube roll from it, can save that. And I have to set the configuration and then go and say with emitter, so with application, can set the spacing. That's a 75 millimeters spacing. And I have 5 liters per hour per emitter, so per drip tube, because it is super drip, so quite a lot comes out. Save the whole thing. Wait, I have to up here. Still on the drip tube, we have no choice where it's displayed, then I have to save here again. And refresh. Then go into irrigation, and here, it's not down there because drip tube is indeed possible up here. Then there is a new manufacturer, IS. And because the super drip is the only one, I can only select that, and then I can draw my drip tube here. And when I click on it, I have here the length, the water flow, and I also have under requirements list here my IS, my super drip, superstore as drip tube. No, there it is up there. It's not connected. That's why it's not being displayed now. But that's mine. That wasn't it. That's it. That's my drip tube. So that's how I can simply add my drip tube if I then have a specific brand name or a specific spacing or something that's not in IRRISketch. I can create such a drip tube quite easily myself. Then let's have a look at how such a drip mat could look. Go back to new element. Call the thing drip mat, enter a brand name there, also from IS, unique ID. So IS drip mat TR is equipment and take. Tim would like 20 millimeter as diameter. Yes, I'll write it down. Drip tube. Who has 20 millimeter drip tube? Netafim, or who makes that, Tim? Yes, okay. The 20 millimeter drip tube. Yes, we do that in box elements, simply included as a selection. And then it simply appears up there in it. You can set it up however you'd like. Line with surface. As I said, it's a line that's displayed wider. Can also select an image again. As I said, the image is only the picture you see at the front, but not what's displayed afterwards. Save, and can then set up a configuration here. And then I want to have the whole thing in irrigation. If I don't tick anything here, then it won't appear anywhere either. So I have to click on something up here, and as a rule, yes, with a drip mat it should be irrigation. And then I can say how wide the whole thing should be. I would like 100 centimeters wide. This is the calculation width. I can set a color. I can say the line should be displayed in a lovely blue. An opacity, if I want it a bit more transparent, like this, for example, then the line width. This is also the width that gets drawn. So the width up there, that's the calculated width, and this is the line width. That's separate. I don't know, perhaps you can think of a scenario why the line should be narrower or wider than what I calculated. Well, at least I can set it. The width that's calculated is 100 centimeters. Line width, I'll just take 100 centimeters as well. That makes sense to me. And then I have line gap here. Array or line gap. Spacing, I can display the whole thing as a line, so as a continuous line or as just a dotted line, or in this case, because it's 1 meter wide, as a dashed line. And here at the front, at 0, 0, I have a completely continuous line, but I can also do it a bit differently by saying I want a spacing of 20, or the dashes should have a spacing of 20. And between the dashes, I would like to have a gap of 40, and then I can also specify here how I want the connections to be as miter, round, or bevel. And then I can set the end as butt, square, or round. Good. I can also set shadow if I want to, and then I save the whole thing. ISTR is what the drip mat is called. I go back into my irrigation, save, refresh, and then let's have a look at what the whole thing looks like and what gets calculated afterwards. I was in irrigation, I go to custom element in the drawing tool, and there I have ISTR, that was the drip mat. Zoom in, and now I can draw there. That's then 1 meter wide, up to here, up to there, and then I go back down there. Like this, for example. So this is now this dashed line. The blocks 20, the spacing 40 in between. And this is how I could display it. And if I look down here now, I now have a width of 100 centimeters, I have a length of 34 meters, and I then have an area of 34.7 meters squared. And so I could at least graphically, and also later in the calculation, have such a drip mat displayed. Unfortunately, I can't type in anywhere here that I still have a line spacing and still have drip points in it. That would certainly be the next step. I'll also suggest again that we might still be able to do that. But this way I at least have the square meterage or the lane lengths that I need to offer a drip mat. This is the drip mat function that you can use as a line. And width can use. Then we can also do one thing that I find quite exciting, and that is I can create different sets. I can combine several things together. And for this, I would now like to create the following, for example, a pump. I click on a new element. What do I call the pump? What do I call it? EasyJet. EasyJet 1845, that's what it was called. I can write something else in there, like liters, size, manufacturer, brand name. I can see IS again, can also enter my DAB, or Grundfos can enter my IID there. Pump E for pump individual. I'll call this up here pump template as well. Template on equipment as element. Can already put the image of the pump in there. We can just do that. I happen to have one there. Can adjust this here a bit more like this so it doesn't look too small. And then I configure the pump. basically the same way as we just did with the tree, have done. This goes into irrigation. This is an image because I have an image of the pump. So let's take that in. Save this. Save. We go into the project and update. And then I have in irrigation a pump, and specifically pump template. I can click into, but a pump can also be found later in the requirements list. And down there is the pump once. But I have the thing called template because I also want to do the thing again with the txt file. Because I don't want to have another picture in there again, which might be too big, but I want to make it nice, compact as a txt file. And now it's getting exciting because now I can actually combine components. Combine. So I can't just use the pump, but I can also connect things directly. And now you can, for example, go and say, I'll now take my water source and place it here. And this water source stands. Now for my pump, so I click on the water source and enter a flow rate. So this is a pump that manages 2,400 liters per hour. That's then my value, which I can later distribute. Click on that, apply, and then I'll also make a supply line right away. So I'll go up like this. Done. And the thing, oops. Look at the supply line. I'll take both. And now I'll hide. It's simply under the pump. Yes, I should have cut the whole thing out a bit more cleanly. Then it would have been nicer too. Let's make it longer. Somehow. I'm not covering myself in glory here right now. Oh wait, no, there's still supply line, so make it longer. Pump on top. So, and now I'll take all of this. Hear this, and click down there. On my text. Save the whole thing, go back to custom elements, and make a new set, and call it now. EasyJet, 1845 with connection. Done. Can add a description. Creates a unique identification. Complete. Equipment. I can also insert the element image again. Save. Configure the whole thing. And then go back to irrigation again. And now as text. And then I add this text that I copied before. And it's important here that I use ungroup. Otherwise, the whole thing is displayed as one unit. And so the whole thing remains separate. What's meant by this? I'll show you in a moment. Save the whole thing. And let's throw these out. And we'll reload this once. Pump. Escape complete. And there it is already. Exactly the same set that we just created. And if I now say here, I'll place a pilot line and then a sprinkler line there. Then I immediately have here the 2,400 liters of water that the pump can deliver. So I can now, for example, go and draw in all my pumps and separation stations and all sorts of water sources just like that. Draw in. I've stored the fixed water quantities there. And later also in the requirements list. My pump will be in there, which I can later also calculate. I can also do the whole thing with robotic lawnmowers or any other things that I'd still like to install in the garden. And so I can combine things. So I can insert pictures and can then put pipes, valves, sprinklers, everything in there. I can also go and say, I'll take all of this together, make a set out of it. And can simply duplicate it. And the technical data, the installation distances, the water quantities, they are all taken over in this set. And I can then output them via used elements always as a set completely. That means if there's someone who says, I want valve boxes built this way and that way, then he can, in principle, assemble the box exactly as he would like to have it, can make a set out of it, has an article number, and can simply use it in such a calculation just the same. Use? I actually think that's quite powerful and actually also a nice thing. And there, you can get very creative to try things out. If you are creative and say, I've made something that's absolutely brilliant, everyone should have it, then you can share all these things with us or with the community. There's a share button. That means these things, drawing set, I can simply share them when I click on them. There I can. Now enter a password if I only want this for certain people to share because I want this just for me or for my customers who should use it. Or I leave the password empty, then anyone can click on it. Click OK. Okay. Then it creates that up there that's drawn. And then I can't anymore, right? Oh yes, I can still change it, but now it's shared. And when I go into Hub up here, then I see all the things that have been shared and also from the individual users. And if you say, I have great things planned, I want to add lots of plants and lots of pumps and enter lots of things, then you can do the same and share these things just like that with your customers or your friends or anyone else. And I'm curious to see how creative you are, how many elements you create yourselves, and how you make the IRRISketch database simply a bit bigger with it. There's also in the workspace here at the front, the custom elements. And there I can also say which elements I want to use. These are the sets, drawing sets, what we've just done, multi-robot if I want. Them, I can also activate them here. They're then pre-saved and stored accordingly. Basically, all custom elements are always active, but you can switch it off here or remove certain things or not. So custom elements. Any more questions about this? Dirk, I'm listening. Yes, actually. Can I also create sprinklers? No. It'll definitely come. No, not in this way. Simply because although actually we could do that, yes, I need to have a word with Philip because we actually have all the sprinklers that you can create. We have a problem with sprinklers because they're interactive. They have precipitation rates that should be matched to each other. So they should work together. And if everyone sets up any old sprinkler, then it won't work. So I have the possibility, there I have sprinklers, and there I have the Any brand sprinklers. There I have 1.5 inch, 1.25 inch, 1 inch sprinklers and so on. And I can use those and configure them as well. I click on it and can set the pressure here and can set the consumption, so how much the sprinkler uses, and can also name it as an alias freely. And then I can use the sprinkler and can multiply it. I can't save it yet, but actually you could put that into custom elements as well. Yes, I'll speak to Philip actually. That should go in there. You're absolutely right. Yes. Then you have your sprinkler here. You only have pressure and water quantity. And you just enter the throw distance over here at the front. But you can do that accordingly. Yes, like that. What I'm getting at is simply the 1.5 inch Hunter sprinklers that you can also have, them included. I mean, if you put them in, wonderful. Yes. So that would be the first workaround. Use a 1.5 inch sprinkler, enter the data, and then you can get started with it. Good. Rob had another question. Not directly a question, but what Dirk just meant, because in the element form, there's also the point sprinkler under the drip line. I thought that you could now also enter sprinklers there. Yes, but that's probably still a kind of placeholder or something. Yes, probably. I need to just see what else we might have there. We're trying it out right now. Just a moment. I can't change it because it's shared. So it's out. So when you share things here via the hub, then you'd better make a copy, because if it's shared, then you can't. Edit it here. If I now go into the set here, then I can click on something there, but I don't have the option to add anything. Then it's best to make a clone. So a copy of it and then share the copy. Right, let's go out. And now I can add something there. Now let's use Oh no, that was the spot sprinkler. We don't have the sprinkler itself in there. We only have the spot sprinkler as a variant in there. And spot sprinkler is, I did have it in here. Where have we gone to now? That would have been the next question. What is a spot sprinkler? Why is it gone now, Philip? Why is it gone? It's not yet implemented. But again, I did have it already in my list. I was playing around with it. Nozzle. No, spot sprinkler. There it is, spot sprinkler up there. So what is a spot sprinkler? A spot sprinkler is a sprinkler that can adjust different throwing distances. A contour sprinkler, exactly. So when I have such a lovely area here and use the spot sprinkler here, then you see that it recognizes the area, and when I click on it, it sprays this area exactly like this. And if I create a second one, then they position themselves next to each other like this. Then I have 3 spot sprinklers here, and they spray with the jet exactly these sections. No, I don't have any head-to-head overwatering then, because the sprinkler also has the same output over the entire throwing range. They do this with nozzles of different sizes or with different pressures that are then adjusted. And that is then the spot sprinkler function. It's coming at some point. They're just technically adjusted sprinklers. That means they can be, the sprinkler housing itself has a valve for pressure regulation inside, and the speed is also adjusted. As soon as I then throw further, then the speed goes down so that I can get more water there. And so they still get an even application rate, even though I don't have head-to-head coverage. This is like the first implementation out, and our approach is simply to say, I have the sprinkler. If I now say I only have one area, sure, then I'll put it in the middle, and then I'll set it up if it's good. If I now set up more sprinklers like this, I want to know where's the best place to position them so that I don't make the overlap here particularly large, and also the distances. We'll probably make an export function there so that the manufacturers can extract the data that was drawn like this and load it into the sprinkler so that it's then automatically set up the same way too. We'll see. Okay, then. Let's go into not into the DU. Yes, please. A message. Yes, tell me, is this the same technology that's used in those big hose reel sprinklers from, oh, what's it called again? Here. From the ones that travel. Controlled by pressure? It follows the contour of the boundaries. Yes, if they do that, it's basically like that, exactly. If I have strong wind now, or something like that, can it then also be adjusted? No, they're certainly not that advanced yet. Then you'd somehow have to have on the sprinkler a weather station that then somewhere still. Yes, I have that. I would have that. Oh, I see. Yes, yes. Well, in agriculture, when there are large systems, technically, everything is possible with these systems. Not yet. No, these are private customer garden systems with systems that are installed once and then that's it. But that's coming slowly now, or it's always been like that. I've also seen somewhere a Chinese manufacturer like that who does it as retail, as a do-it-yourself version. Brings out, but not installed underground, just a simple pylon that you can put somewhere. Husqvarna last year bought some company in America that builds something similar. Well, whether that then so far I find these things very expensive. How does the control of that work then? Is that a separate control unit, or do you also use others? No, it's complete. They have their own control unit, which then also has to be programmed. You've seen the pictures. I can then connect several of these things to the control unit, and I basically need much less piping. If I have a sprinkler, I place it somewhere in the middle of the area and then it does everything. And I can connect several sprinklers to the same pipe because the sprinklers all have their own valves as well. Yes. I basically have a pipe and connect 10 of these sprinklers with only one somewhere in the middle and I'm done. I have the clean coverage there. It certainly makes sense in certain situations. Whether it will catch on, I don't know. I don't hear anything about it from the big manufacturers. Whether they then say, let the small ones do it and see if one of them eventually has a good product, then you can buy out the shop. I could well imagine it. So I find the system itself a brilliant thing because you often have jagged front gardens. Of course, naturally. So the system itself is actually worth its weight in gold. Yes, if it works well, it certainly adds value. As I said, we had the negative example of Gardena Aquacontour in Germany or in Europe. Yes, worked exactly or works in exactly the same way. Although the rotation speed of the system cannot be adjusted there. But basically it's a similar system. But it also doesn't have its own valve. That means you needed another valve box and a control unit. And the Aquacontour was programmed at the sprinkler. So you had to press on it. There was a solar cell on it because a small battery was built in. And then after a year, the battery was flat. And then all the stored data was gone. You have to do the whole thing again. Because you had to sit at the sprinkler to adjust things you were soaking wet when you did it. And the sprinkler itself was about as big as a 10-liter bucket. So a huge, great lump, and they do it through a system that simply works externally. There's a smart app. I can make all the settings via the app, save them via the app. It's all much smarter. But at the moment, the systems also cost good money. So in America, a set like that with computer, one sprinkler, I think they're asking $2,500 for it. You can already place many sprinklers for that money. But you only need one pipe, and that's it.
Yeah.
We'll see. I don't know yet what will come of it. Does the system already exist in Europe then? IRRIGreen? No, IRRIGreen is so far only in America. I've known the company for 4 years now. When they first came out back then, I also spoke with them. But there was no talk yet of them wanting to expand to Europe. At the moment, they're only on the American market. They were also at the trade fair in America. I spoke with them again there. And that's how IRRISketch came about. At the moment, I don't think they have an idea yet or any goals to expand further because they're still very focused on the American market at the moment. They're also still in development. The third version of the sprinklers has now come out. But I also know of 2 or 3 other startups that produce similar things in a slightly different way, using a different technique. So there's something happening in that direction, just as everything is being digitized nowadays with computers, and naturally there's also AI on it somewhere again. It's the same with sprinklers, onwards. At the moment, I see it that it's interesting for some areas, but by no means for all. That it naturally has a great added value because things are simply applied cleanly. And a system that's classically planned will come to that shortly with this overlap calculation, which is just complicated for the private user. If a private user says, I'm doing an irrigation system without planning, then that wouldn't work out well. Let's have a look at the effects right now. And with these systems, it's relatively simple, even for the private user. Just make a trench, put the sprinkler in the middle, set the thing up with the app, and I'm done. Yes, all right. Yeah. The development is there. We have it on our radar. You can't say that's now the thing that outperforms everything everywhere and works in such a way that in 5 years there won't be any normal sprinklers left. I don't believe that. All right, thank you. You're welcome. Where did we leave off? Yes, CUDU profiles. Let's start. Let's go into this topic. And that is, you all know that we can perform with IRRISketch calculations regarding Niederschlags precipitation amount. That is, when I have a sprinkler here, like for example, the Hunter MP rotators, you see behind the nozzles, there are blue drops everywhere. And that means we have spray profiles. That's the case with the large MPs, but not with the small ones. With Rainbird, we have spray profiles from almost all of them because Rainbird has shown itself to be more generous there. I'm still fighting with all the manufacturers to finally make these spray profiles available to us. And when we have the spray profiles, then we can make various calculations when they're so perfectly laid out, like here, for example. And I move my mouse over them, mark them all. Then I have an option down here on the bottom left to calculate the precipitation amount. And then it shows me perfectly. Irrigated areas, and I have here below in my bar, two values shown, namely CU and DU. Do you see that? CU 87%, DU 80%. So what kind of value is this now? So CU and DU, that means, firstly, there I have my sheet, Christensen uniformity coefficient. And then the distribution. Uniformity value, so the distribution accuracy value. So this value says something about how evenly the water is distributed across the area. This is a paper from the CIT, that's the Center of Irrigation Technologies in Fresno, California. And that's a university, and they do nothing else all day but think about irrigation systems in the private sector, but naturally also in commercial applications. This, and they have calculated these two values. These are two different formulas, and they provide information about how precisely water is distributed across an area. And these are two slightly modified formulas. Which one is now the better one? I don't really want to evaluate. I've had people tell me they go by the CU value. Others say I go by the DU value. I don't mind either way. In IRRISketch, we use these formulas and put them in and provide evaluations based on them. And you can see the evaluations here below. We have the CU value once, which starts at 70% is poor, 75 is satisfactory, 79 is good, and with the DU value. The values are somewhat lower because the calculation basis is somewhat different. There you start with 70% as satisfactory, and everything above that, 85 would be excellent. And these are simply values that one should know. You may know, every sprinkler doesn't. You may know, every sprinkler doesn't. The same amount of water, so we need to irrigate head to head so that we have 100% equal calculations across the area. It would be quite simple if we only had square areas, then a sprinkler would fit in the corner, then we'd have the whole thing sorted, but we don't have square areas. We have 1,000 shapes, we have 1,000 sprinklers, and that's why we need a value that gives a rating of how well an area is irrigated, and that's exactly what we do with this DU or CU value. Here, this is actually the optimal setup. You see, I have everything nicely arranged opposite each other. It fits exactly with the throw distances overlapping. And when I look at this, I get a value of DU 80%, CU 87, and that would be 80. Very good. 87 here is even excellent. That would be the ideal scenario. It would be brilliant if we always had that. And these values simply give me an indication of how well the irrigation system is planned. So what does this mean now if I have such a system? The theory behind this is as follows. The lawn, which is what this is all about, wants a certain amount of water to stay nice and green. And that's what we want to achieve. We want a beautiful green lawn. We don't want any yellow patches, and we naturally want to not use too much water. So we want the right amount of water for the lawn, or have the right amount of water per lawn. And if you look at the literature, you always come to a value of 15 millimeters of precipitation per week on a summer's day. So 28 degrees, no idea how it's exactly defined. You'll certainly find information about it. Of course, this 15 millimeter value per week is such a blanket figure. It's certainly not set in stone because there are also thousands of variables. Do you have an area that's more in the sun? Is it always in the shade? There are different grass varieties, different soil types, and so on and so forth. But that would be about 15 millimeters on a summer's day of precipitation when there's no natural rainfall. If I have rainfall, I just subtract that from it. That's what IRRIS does partially, with its own calculations by also saying we've had 8 millimeters this week of precipitation, or that much is expected. So I don't need 15 millimeters of precipitation, but just 7, and then I reach my 15 for the week. And if the 15 are well distributed, then everything is nice and green, and I don't have any overwatering. What happens if I now have such a system? And this is the kind of system I see. What happens when someone thinks they can install sprinklers, then they install some here at the front? Sure, that one reaches there, that one goes there, that one's in the middle, so I somehow have water everywhere. But when I look at the numbers now on the area, it's the same area. Here we have 16 sprinklers. And with the optimal version we're at 31, so pretty much exactly twice as many. And here we had a DU value of 80. I'll stick with the DU value now, just so we don't get confused. And with such an area that's not so good here, they've simply just placed them opposite each other instead of really head to head. When I calculate this, I get only 60%. And you can also see quite quickly here, there are spots that get less water. They get here only 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters. And here I have areas that have 7, or here where it's dark. Also, they're 11, 12, 13. And what I'm using here are MP rotators. And when we look at the nozzle list from Hunter, then Hunter tells us in such a 4-way configuration I'm at 11, 12 millimeters precipitation per hour. And if I extrapolate this now and say I want 15 millimeters per week, and I have 11 millimeters at the nozzle, and I have a perfect sprinkler configuration, then that means for me, I need to run the system for about an hour per week, 20 minutes perhaps. And then I have my 15 millimeters at every point on the lawn. So much for the theory. So 1 hour 20 per week. I can then split that into 3 somehow. Watering cycles 3 times, 20 minutes, 3 times 40, 3 times half an hour, 3 times 5 minutes. Then I get roughly there. And then I have roughly my irrigation time. Yes, Dirk? I can't hear you. Your microphone is quiet. Dirk, your microphone is muted. Your microphone is muted. Got it? Is it still muted? Yes, now it's on. Now? Sorry, no problem. With the weekly requirement, or with the irrigation requirement per week, if you go by the evapotranspiration values in IRRIS, you're higher 3-4 millimeters per day in summer. Yes, of course. Of course, there's also the environment factored in, because I have solar radiation and perhaps a bit of wind as well, and then the value is higher. But the 15 millimeters per week per square meter of lawn, those are laboratory conditions without external factors. But no question at all, I'm just mentioning these figures as examples. Everyone can make up their own mind about it. I don't have a patent on it either. But the 15 millimeters, if you read gardening forums, they say that's what a square meter of lawn would like to have. Of course, you can do more than that. If IRRIS says we need 3-4 millimeters per day, fine by me. We can do that. Speaking of which, there was also once a function for runtime calculation.
Rechnung, ne?
Yes, exactly. But it's no longer there. No, we removed it because I kept getting inquiries. There was always confusion. We tried to provide something there, but there are just so many variables. And if you program something like that and stick to it, then you have unhappy people at some point who say, I calculated it, it gave me a time, I set it, and my lawn burnt, or something like that. We removed it. Maybe it'll come back at some point when we can do it better, because actually I do want to help, but always with a warning finger saying, I'm telling you how I see it, but that doesn't mean I'm right. Even with this matter here, with this calculation and with this application rate, these are my thoughts that I'm sharing. If someone has a different view, then very, very welcome. I've been discussing with people a lot lately about such things, and I noticed that there are many comprehension problems, at least as I understand it. And many people don't properly consider it If I have this system now, then I only have 3-4 millimeters here. Here I have my 11 millimeters. If I now take my statement from earlier, if I have in a perfect laboratory condition 15 millimeters, I have 11 millimeters. At the sprinkler, if I run my system for 1 hour, 20, then I have 15 millimeters. Here on these areas, I only have 3. That means to get 15 millimeters, there I would actually need to run my system for 5 hours. 3 times 5, 15 millimeters.
Millimeter.
Then I would also have 15 millimeters there. And we know that at 15 millimeters, the lawn is green. So I have to, because the sprinklers probably somehow work together, run all sprinklers for 5 hours to put it dramatically, and then eventually have 15 millimeters of water. And here, 50 or something like that. In the obvious case, I then have a big puddle here. In the worst case, the water is simply gone. And if I then extrapolate to
Laufzeit.
runtime, precipitation, and so on, then over a year, that's quite a lot of money. And above all, it's also water wastage. And there, we're all pushing to say you must install systems that save water. We all used to 25 years ago wash our car on the street with a bucket and sponge. We don't do that anymore because we know that a car wash does it much better with much less water, and wash station back there can be made much cleaner. And with irrigation, it's not done though. There we put one somewhere, sprinkler there and spray wildly around the area or install the system, not properly, and have every year too much water consumption. Here is the extreme example. A few sprinklers in the middle. These are things that I don't know 100%, but which I've already seen from colleagues who install things like that. Or as far as I'm concerned, also call it the Gardena sprinkler with hose, which is just placed here once, here once, here once. And then there and there and there. And if I calculate that, then I'm at 30% DU value, but that's how I know it. And if I let it run like this, and here on the outside, around it turns yellow, and someone says, I want a green lawn, then he has to let it run until at some point there's also the right amount of water. Now I have made myself a calculator, put together. Meanwhile, there are AI tools that can do really brilliant things. And then I just made myself a cost analysis calculator created just to have a look at what does that actually mean here? 80%, what do you have here? 60 or 50? Where were we? 60%, or here only 30%. What does that really mean in numbers? And this calculator works basically like this. I have up here once a postcode that I can enter. This is a German postcode. And then it fetches based on this postcode weather data. There's weather data that's publicly available. Things like that you can download. You can download, load in, and then look at the last 5 years. So of course, I don't know how the next 5 years will be, but the last 5 years you can get those. And then I basically said in the programming, I'd like the data from March until September, because that's the calculation period for me. I'm not going to have any winter data because I'm not interested in the precipitation, but March to September. And then please take this data on a weekly basis. And then have a look at how much precipitation there's been. And I can here set, I want the 15 liters to have, or as far as I'm concerned, even more. If I now take Dirk's variant, then I was at, I don't know, 3 times 7 somewhere, 20 liters perhaps, or 21 liters per week. The precipitation also sometimes on the lawn, and then it calculates in the background the weekly precipitation back, and then only calculates what additionally needs to be given, must. And then I have 2 options here. I can enter here for the DU what my system looks like if it's poorly planned. Let's just take the 60% system, which is probably very often installed, and 80, that would be the optimal system. And then I can enter various parameters here. I can enter the water price. 1.30 per cubic meter, for example. I could also enter electricity here if the whole thing runs via a pump, but we don't have that here. And then I have here different circuits. I have once the flow rate of the circuit, and I have here the precipitation rate that the circuit delivers in millimeters. Can add a few more. Right. And you see, I then have here costs. And In this configuration, the same system over the 5 years, 400 euros in water save. And that would be 372 cubic meters of water, which would thus be wasted. So that's how I tried to put these numbers somewhere to work out, to have a look at how much water is really lost, how much money is really lost. And now you can play around with that. Yes, please. Can we also access that? Belongs? No, not yet, because I'm also not quite sure yet whether it's correct. I just put that together at the weekend. For myself, I don't trust the numbers 100% because I can't really verify them properly. It really does do what I told you in the background, but you can play around with it a bit, and perhaps we'll publish it one day if it's the way I imagine it. But that's how you can approach the matter. And if I then say here that I have a DU of 30%, which is really quite poor, then I'm looking at 1,700 cubic meters of water that would be consumed additionally if I were just working with my gardener sprinkler. It's just a calculation that one can make based on the data. Of course, distribution involves much, much more. I've now somehow got, as I said, shade lawn, sun lawn, stands in the sun, narrow areas by the house. Past that, large open areas, do I have wind exposure and so on. The evaporation isn't even factored in, but I just wanted to take these two values and compare them and see what the recent precipitation values were. How much do I need to irrigate on top of that? And what does it all cost in terms of price and how much water is consumed? And I actually wanted to show this just to get a feel for what it means down there. I'm working on it with Philip, or I'm trying to convince him to install a traffic light system down there for me, which then based on these values, based on this little traffic light system here, maybe we'll manage to get it done this year so that it shows down there whether DU is red or yellow or green, or perhaps different gradations, which then output these percentage values cleanly to say this is now good irrigation or this is poor irrigation. One thing for you, just for understanding, these values are according to this here, catch-can values. This means that during the measurement of this sprinkler in a large hall, the sprinkler was set up and small measuring cups were placed, and the measuring cups caught the amount of water. This means you can see how much water hits each spot on the ground, lands. But the latest research or new development doesn't even bother with saying, I'll do such measurements, because that's actually not interesting at all. Much more interesting is not what lands on the lawn, but what happens at about 10 centimeters depth. And these are completely different things as well. When we talk about drip line with 33 centimeters spacing and laying the rows like that, then you're talking about an irrigation bulb that spreads out like that. You all know the picture where you still get complete coverage. Irrigation, because the water drop that penetrates the soil spreads out. And eventually I have down there about half a meter of water or half a meter of soil that's also moistened through. And actually you should do these measurements in the same way. Actually, you should go and say, I have a lawn area, I install loads of soil moisture sensors in it, irrigate it, and then have a look at 10 centimeters depth, what arrives down there, because it spreads out. And that's a completely different matter than just setting up cups. Just as a thought aid or as consideration of how one can push these things to the extreme. Furthermore, these values are always based on an area. I have calculations here, area times, application rate times something. And that's what happens here in the calculation. I have calculated the area, and I'm really only calculating the area. The area is the basis of the irrigation. And if I now go down here and say, for example, this sprinkler is positioned like this, what happens now? You can see the DU value of 80 hasn't changed. It's exactly the same. You have to ask yourself why. The sprinkler is positioned completely wrong. That's effectively water wastage. But the system doesn't calculate that because the system needs an area as a basis. And a lot of water wastage happens simply because the water doesn't land on the area, but in the flower beds or on the pavement or on the patio. But this calculation always runs on area size. And that's something you need to know as well. That means if I draw it like this here, the sprinkler goes beyond it, then the DU value is still the same because the area is still irrigated just as well. What's shown here next to it, that's what we call it IRRISketch overwatering. You see, it says 3%. That's what's wasted here. You can also make sure that you wrap this up neatly here. And if I now calculate the inner coverage, then I have 0% overwatering. So this is for you to understand even better how this DU value comes about. It's based on the lawn area that's inside it. And it doesn't take into account any pathways. If I have the path in there that gets completely wet, that's effectively speaking also a waste of water, but it's actually not calculated because it's based on the area that's being looked at. I can here, as a designer, if I want it to be precise here at the front, insert non-irrigated zones, insert irrigated zones. That's how I can change it. So I can say here is a path in between, and if I wet it, then I have water wastage there. And that would increase my water wastage accordingly in this overwatering function. So exactly in that one there. Overwatering 0%. So the overwatering is also something you need to check. Of course, the sprinkler that's here would never be set like this. You'd set it like this. And this one at the front, it's positioned like this, of course, because we know ourselves nothing would reach there anymore. Then there's a bit of wind, the sprinkler shifts, so you overlap a bit anyway. But these are also things that in the CU calculation aren't taken into account in this case, because the value here would be exactly the same, 1. That's what I actually wanted to show you. I just wanted to make you a bit aware of what you can use this DU or CU value for, what kind of significance it has, what that might mean at the end in terms of water wastage, money wastage. And for me as a design professional, that's actually the value that's interesting to me. And I'm also an entrepreneur. I also sell my systems to the end customer. And these are values that I can present to the end customer, where I can tell them, look here, your system that's currently here, or maybe even the one the competition installs for you, or someone else entirely, or maybe even yourself, it's poor. And then they ask, why is it poor? Then I say, look here, my system has 75% uniformity, yours only 35. And let's put that into numbers again. And that's what I try to do with this calculator. It's not perfect yet. I'll work on it a bit more. Maybe I'll publish it too, but it shouldn't serve as, I don't know, as an expert witness to produce real values. So I can't guarantee 100% that what it calculates is correct. But it can give a small indication and say, look, this brings 70%, 30%, brings that. Right? I've finished my things. If you still have questions, please ask now. I'm also very interested in your thoughts on this uniformity calculation. Mr. Wessels, I'm listening. Hi, hello. One question, I have a DWG format file. Yes, and would like to import it? Yes, then you open it in AutoCAD, go to AutoCAD, export as PDF, then you have a PDF made from it, and then you import it. Okay, so I can't directly from DWG import or export again. No, DWG files just aren't compatible, neither in nor out. But AutoCAD can do all that, and if you don't have AutoCAD, you can use this DWG file. Also simply online somewhere, there are configuration tools that simply do it. Dirk, I'm listening. Yes, I have to bother you again. And I have a request for, we have the sprinklers. In the legend, the sprinkler table. With the what? In the layout. Yes. Oh yes, that's right. Right, and then as a table. Yes, yes, exactly like that. I'd like to have something like that too, for drip lines. So that one can get for drip start. Such a thing too. List, because then also the installing company. can see, okay, on that drip start number 7, there are 35 meters connected. He can see that from the drawing. If he has it as a PDF, he can't see it otherwise. Yes, the quantity of the drip tubing. We can get the assignment through the color, or we can also label a drip start so small still. Right beside it, that's zone 3, zone 4, zone 5, but the meterage of the individual zones, I know I've got that already, and you've probably told me that before too. Yes. But yes. Right, well, I've passed it on. When it's your turn, wonderful. Yeah. Then, is it possible in the tables? Here too. A sorting. Not only in the columns, but also in the rows. In rows? You can always sort by columns up here. Exactly. Because that's partly, you can see it here at the front too, the numbers quite randomly jumbled up. Yes, I can do the number. Wait, I can normally do the number too. Sort. Yes, you can. But if you now, for example, sort that by zones, which is then valve box or valve assignment, which makes sense, so that within this zone, it's then numbered consecutively and not so randomly jumbled up. It's not crucial, but I usually do it like this. It's a bit fiddly, no question. I know I've then created several lines, have 3 valve boxes, naturally want valve box 1 at the top, with zone 1 to 7, valve box 2, zone 8 to 10, valve box 3, zone 12 to 18 or so.
So,
yes, I do it then. I do it like this. I pick out the zones, click on them, and then I have the zone name. Then I simply change it so that it fits. So, wait, I need something that's worked out. That wasn't finished at all. That wasn't finished at all. Right? Here I have zone 1 to 3, valve box 1 to 3, and then I go into zone 1, let it display, and then have here the name of the zone and can change it here. And then I sort them so that they're arranged underneath each other as I need them. That thing is then called zone 9. But with the sprinkler numbers, that works, doesn't it? The sprinkler numbers. So you mean you want this table, the sprinkler table, yes? They're all numbered now, but you can, for example, if you sort by zone, now you only have here one zone. If you have multiple zones, then it has with me. In the planning, yes, then it changes the zone. And then you no longer have the sprinklers. Numbered consecutively, you mean? Yes, that's also the numbering probably comes from how I click on them in the order. Yes, yes, yes. And sometimes they slip out, then you have to go over them again, and probably that's where this mess, mixed up numbering comes from. Yes, you can change the numbering there. So I click on the sprinkler, it says alias, and then I'll call that one at the top. I don't know, like this. And then I have that one in the list. There, that's the name. I see, that's not at all. But then I don't have what type of sprinkler it is written there anymore. Actually, it should be with the numbering. But there was something Philip showed me once. If I find anything out, then I'll write to him again. Great, thanks.
Yeah.
The sprinklers can display names. Yes. Okay. Right, Matthias. I have another question, and that is when the project is planned, and I see the plan, and I also see these drip tubing areas, and I go from A3 to A4 then. The labels only on these drip tubing areas disappear completely from the plan, and I have to scroll smaller and I find them right on the outside. They somehow fly around the area. I don't know why. I've had this before. I don't know how I did it now, but every time they are then gone. The labels, now where the drip pipe starts are, yes, yes, I really should now. Have a look, try it out. I usually go and set the sheet size first of all. Yes, but sometimes it's like that, then it's too small for me, so I take a larger base. Yes, and then I do. I always make two plans, once with the background, once without, and then this drip pipe area. This label is gone. Then they're hidden. You mean that this here is the drip start? Yes, exactly. This is now a plan that is A3. Should be the one. Then I'll change it now to A4 landscape format. Yes. Yes, of course. Now the things are down there. Let's go. They're in drawing mode. Make it smaller. Yes. There they are. Yes, they're still there, but for me they are usually gone then. Don't know why? Good question. You can change the placement, whether that has to do with it now. You can go here on displacement. I'll do that then. But I don't really know why they're gone then. Probably a formatting problem somewhere. Yes, could be. Okay, good. Thank you.
Danke.
Okay, then has anyone else got something? Otherwise, we're done. Rob has another question. Yes, I don't even know if I can formulate this correctly. With the layout, the table, would it also be possible to put it on a second page or something like that, so that I have the plan at the front, for example, and the table on the second page, so that basically when I print it out, I get two A4 pages. I see on one page the drawn plan. If I, for example, have a huge plan and then put the table slapped on there, then the table is always in the way somewhere. Yes, first sheet with plan. Click on plus. And you just go there and say, I want to. See nothing of it there. Hide it all. I'll take a table. Oh, sorry. Hey, I don't have anything in there. Yes, there. There. I have a white sheet with just the table. Okay, but if the first one and there the second. But if I now print both, oh, right. Then I have the first and the second there. Yes, yes, you can create a second plan or create a second sheet, and then you just attach it there. You can hide the things here simply so they're not displayed, and then you would have them in there. Yes, that was the question, but not that difficult after all. Yes, yes. Okay, cool.
Gut.
Yes, we've already managed it. 1.5 hours. Not bad. Okay, then I will thank you all. If you have any more questions, get in touch and have a good start to the season. And goodbye. Ciao. Thank you. Thank you. See you later. Bye. Bye.